And then now it's time for the Travis Scott Astroworld tragedy update. A lot has happened since
Yep.
our
Here,
last video on this, and
I'm just gonna
there's
I'm just
so
gonna
much to cover. I just want just dive in because
yeah.
sink it in, and I'll try to keep up with you.
Yeah, so I kind of just been making notes over the last couple of days. So again, guys, we have two different videos. We did one where we actually went through one of the complaints that was filed and we just showed who was getting sued, what the claims were, how these complaints kind of look. That was one video, and then we did another one just talking about what had happened. So if you want to watch those, check them out. But there's been a lot that's been happening. And for example, just today, there were personal injury attorneys, and specifically, this was from Benjamin Crump's law firm. And so he's the one who had represented the
Right,
family of George
George
Floyd.
Floyd.
And so now he's taken this on. And this is just an example of just one firm, okay? This is not everyone, but just this one firm. They announced today that they have over 200 plaintiffs, right? So 200 people who had been at this show, and they are suing Travis Scott, Drake, Nations, but then also the Sports Invention Center for negligence, and then also gross negligence. And just in one filing, they have 99 plaintiffs. So that's, again, just to give an example of like
How
where
big
this
this
is
is
going to
gonna
be
get?
at. Yeah, another attorney also gave some commentary, and he goes, I think this is going to be in the billions of dollars when everything is
When it's
said and
all said
done,
and
and
done, yeah.
a part of me is just like, obviously, I think every single person who was at this event has a claim to a degree, right? But then it escalates as someone's had been injured or crushed and fatalities. But, a part of me is just wondering how chaotic is this going to get? Because we also are hearing about now this 9-year-old boy, and he was
He's in a
one of the
coma.
plaintiffs with Benjamin Crump's firm. And now he's in a medical coma, yeah.
That was such a tragic story. I read that he went to the show with his dad. They were in the mix, and it was really crushing. He put his son on his shoulders, and then the father just got lightheaded and was getting crushed, and he couldn't whatever. He passes out. The 9-year-old, obviously falls after he passes out, and then the father wakes up eventually, and he can't find his son. His son has already been taken away and is somewhere treated. He found it at the children's hospital. Like, just the panic of passing out, waking up, and looking around, and nobody realizes that was your son, like, that was taken away. They just saw some kid on the ground, and all the stuff that's coming out. We're up to 9 victims right now. Like,
Yeah, so and with that, right? So the ninth person was a 22-year-old woman, and she was formally announced as brain dead, but then she passed. And so we are 9 people into this, but there were many other people that were
Hardy.
obviously hospitalized, had cardiac arrest, and someone had described this in a way that was visual for me, and they're like, so people would hold up their phones, right, to get video of Travis, and they didn't have the ability to even lower their arms because they were
Right.
so compacted. And so now we're talking about children. And I think that the range of ages of those who the
The
fatalities were
fatalities was
between
14 was the youngest on
yeah,
that, and
14 to
yeah.
27. So we're talking, there were children at this event. Obviously, it was promoted as a family friendly event because you have the ability to buy tickets for children. And so in my mind, that heightened the need for security because we have, of course, adults who are getting trampled on, but the likelihood that these children would have survived, kind of goes down. And we saw that from how people were injured. So as part of that press conference that happened earlier today, they had a couple of the different plaintiffs say some words. And it was hard for them. And, almost everyone just kind of broke down crying at some point because they said this was the scariest thing that they'd ever been through. And this one plaintiff, she commented and she just goes, I thought I was going to die. You're walking around and you see bodies on the ground. And she goes, there was literally only 2 places that you could get water from. There was a station at the entrance, right near the gate, and there was another station near the porta potties. And she goes, no one knew that it was there. It was so far away, you couldn't get through the crowd or whatever. So she goes, we were literally just like, if there was any water anywhere, and then another guy, he was just like, oh, I was wearing a
And
sweater and I took it off, and
the
it was
water
like
thing
wringing
is
it
such
out.
the water thing is such low hanging fruit that has been a subject of controversy at many festivals. At Coachella, it's been a
Right.
controversy. Woodstock, it was those Woodstock fiascos, there was a controversy. This is not a new thing that you have to have water stations. I don't understand. Maybe there is some kind of law. I'm not familiar with the laws in Texas as far as this stuff goes, but they're like, I don't understand, for if there's 50,000 people, why there isn't at least 100 water stations. Like, why,
Right.
or what would that require to handle? So every section, because as you could see in the chaos from the videos and stuff and the footage that we have shown, it wasn't just like this was just up front where people were having problems. It was in the front, it was a little bit back, it was in the middle, it was in the far back. As far, if you were involved in this show, you had a potential situation. So I mean, there's just so much low hanging fruit that just a common sense thing. Like, unless these
Yeah.
water stations were two water stations and they were the entire length of the crowd on either side, that's not going to get it. If it's just like a little porta
So
potty station.
in the common sense kind of thing, Kyle made a good point. He goes, "Why would you bring your 9-year-old to that concert?" Well, why
That's
wouldn't
neither
you?
here nor there. But that's neither here nor there.
If you think that you're gonna have, a normal concert going experience and you can just have your kid on your shoulders and it's gonna be okay, you have no expectation that there's gonna be any kind of fatality or that anyone's gonna get crushed, and that goes to the event coordinators. They weren't prepared for the crowd. They weren't prepared with medical in any way. And in fact, I heard that there was kind of this timeline, this critical 30-minute timeline of when people started dropping. Okay, and we saw a couple pauses by Travis Scott, and the ambulance is coming in, and one plaintiff had said it was like the violinist on the Titanic who played while the ship sank around him. So during that 30 minutes, when people were literally dying, he kept performing, and he kept performing. And I guess with the ambulances, they had 20 units on site. And so within like 15 minutes, 20 minutes of the performance, they were already calling for more units, and they go, this is not going to be enough.
Right.
So they already knew that things were falling apart. And I kind of, I made this point. I go, Travis Scott had in-ears.
In-ears. He had an earpiece.
So he had the ability to, for people to communicate with him of what was going on. Why wasn't the front of house telling the stage what was going on? Why weren't people on the stage who could see what was happening stopping the show?
There's so much, and I'll tell you, when as more people are releasing footage and stuff, when you saw the other angle of that kid, that when Travis Scott did stop the show, when the second time, later on, security's like, help, let's let security get this guy out, and you see from the perspective of the crowd, he's looking straight at this guy who is unconscious, lifeless, just being carried out, and him going, yeah, poor choice of words, singing yeah as somebody's getting carried out. I don't think he was thinking, obviously, but he saw what was going on. He saw the chaos that was going on. And when you said that thing about when you were talking about he has an ear monitors, I was like, oh my god, you're absolutely, like, what are you talking about? There is zero excuse of why that was going on. There was chaos on all ends of things. We did pull footage, and he has a history of starting fights at his shows, and encouraging crowds to rush the stage and to rage, and encouraging fans to jump off of balconies. The shows are wild, and this stuff is catching up to him. And
Yeah. So Justin had a good comment. He goes, so in your professional opinion, do you think someone's going to jail? Right. So FBI has now joined the Houston police investigation. So there is
possibility.
they're looking at it from the criminal standpoint. And so is it criminal negligence? Is someone going to jail? I mean, you better believe when it comes to the loss of life, that everyone who was involved in this is up for that investigation to see what had happened and who's going to be held responsible. Because what we're talking about right now is the civil side, right? Civil is when you have the families and the actual people who attended this event filing lawsuits, right? So it's directly from them to the people that they say hurt them. Versus when it comes with FBI and the police that are involved, we're looking at potential criminal investigation, or there is a criminal investigation and criminal charges. So it's very different. That's the state that's taking action against you potentially.
Yeah, it's I would like to see some real changes happening. With concerts and major concerts, like none of this should have happened. All of this could have been prevented. Um, you know, I'm not like not as to necessarily just place everything on Travis Scott, but they were aware, of previous Astroworld shows where the police chief or met up with them beforehand, addressing their concerns from previous things. They already had people breaking through the barricades and stuff. They had fair warning on adjustments that needed to be made. So
So like, oh, this is funny. So Rich House Reviews, he goes, I don't want to listen to Sicko Mode with a kid next to me at all. People are doing drugs, they're growing, no earmuffs can, and what you can't unseen, right? Cancel that kid's parents. I mean, look, I'm not a parent, other than of course being a cat parent. I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to judge anybody else. Again, from the would I take, let's say, a more PC concert like Lady Gaga, you think that you're going to have an event where things are controlled. Is it on the parents that maybe they should have known that Travis Scott puts on these shows and he's wild? And, obviously there were issues in 2019 with the festival as well, of the same kind of like people were trampeding through the gate, breaking in.
right.
What did the parents know and how much liability is on them? Probably not a lot.
Well, no, and speaking as a parent, you know what I mean. Yes, there's some responsibility and some guilt, is on the parents, but like not like from necessarily like a legal standpoint. But I'm sure they feel guilty, enough for allowing these things, and maybe, especially the father. Like I can't imagine. They were, just he was just trying to do something. Like I've taken my kid to concerts, before, and we've gone to sold out packed Lupe Fiasco shows where we're in the middle. But as soon as something kind of gets a little too much, like we go back to the soundboard. I from my mid 20s, I stopped watching shows up front. I used to do the whole stage diving. I've been did the mosh pits and got all hardcore and all that stuff. But there was a certain point where I just wanted to I just wanted to enjoy the show, and there's no better place to hear the show than from the soundboard. That's a little known fact. Like if you're by the guy that's doing the sound, you are literally in the best place to hear the artist that you want to see, and usually can be pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think
so
at this event,
while I
other
think some responsibility, I was gonna say, while I do think some responsibility does fall on the parent, this was an all ages event. And it
right.
doesn't matter if they were 9, if they were 90. Nobody expects to go to a concert and die or get crushed. They expect to get in there and there'd be security there to protect them against, people that are out of line. They expect to be, medical services if somebody passes out. Like there's an expectation when you go that you're not going to die. You might get hurt if you put yourself in harm's way, but at a certain point, you would like to think like, at what would it have taken for them to stop the show? If like there was
Right.
gunfire in the air, would that have stopped the show? If they literally saw that, like they're getting reports that people are just walking around with knives stabbing people, would that have stopped the show? Like what would have taken to stop the show? Because you were seeing bodies coming out, you were seeing bodies getting dropped on their head when they were being rescued by
But
security.
even okay, but even in the whole like what someone walking around and stabbing people. Okay, let's talk about that. There were reports of forcible injections with fentanyl
We
and
ended up,
other opioids.
but that security guard ended up recanting his story and saying
And
that
as
and
far as
saying
I know, that security guard is the only verified instance of saying I was injected with fentanyl. And there may be other cases because we've heard there may be other cases, but he did recant. And did he say why? Was he just doing drugs and got caught or something?
yeah. No, I was just like, yeah, he maybe he took some drugs out in the crowd hanging, because one of
Yeah.
the terrible things that I saw too was also, a police officers that were sitting there with their phones filming Travis Scott up at the front when all this chaos was going on. There was a lot of stuff that was happening that, and I wonder, like we saw with the Capitol 6 riots, that happened, that, in DC, as soon as that thing happened, there's all this video footage, and you see like these people dancing on this ambulance right now. There's video footage. We could see their face. Those people should be arrested. I think anybody that interfered and was shaking that ambulance car, or dancing on the ambulance car, or any of these people just, whatever, that are on tape doing these things should be held accountable. Like you're on tape.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's just a tragedy, and I'm sorry, I get worked up every time I
I
talk.
know, I
Whatever.
know, I get it. Well, hey, let's touch on at least one more thing with BetterHelp, right? So we've kind of seen this come
All
up.
right.
So Travis Scott had said, "Hey, I understand that there's some emotional trauma that has happened, and so I want to pay for you guys to get some help through BetterHelp." There's been a little bit of pushback, and people just being like, "Is this BetterHelp just trying to get free press and be like, hey, we're the superheroes. They're gonna help, and now we're gonna get people who are gonna be lifetime subscribers and this and that." And I guess BetterHelp did put out a statement when some of those challenges came up, and was like, is Travis Scott getting any kind of kickback? Because now you have all this information you're going to sell to third parties. And BetterHelp said, no, that's not the case. Now, my feeling on it, it doesn't feel that great as far as BetterHelp, and it does feel kind of like a PR move, and maybe they're just, but at the end of the day, I think these people
That's
actually do need help, and they do need to talk to someone.
I
So I'm glad for
I actually
that.
have a different point of view on that because while it's natural to kind of take that cynical kind of approach with it, and there's always going to be that knee jerk reaction. As long as these kids are having somebody to talk to, and I can personally vouch for the BetterHelp services, I think they're a great company as far as the help that you can receive from people. So, I'm one of these people that believes that everybody needs a little therapy every now and again. So I can't imagine going through this tragic event and the families. It's good at least that they have this option to do things for whatever the reason, however they got there. They're going to be able to talk to people, and maybe even just introducing them to the whole idea of getting some kind of personal therapy, and working through other problems that maybe aren't just Astroworld. So maybe there's a little kickback or whatever, but I don't know. I'm just glad that now services are being offered to 50,000 people that may need them. So
Yeah.
that's my kind of feeling. I try to look at a little bit of the good in it, but there was a couple other comments in here that I saw that this would have never happened at a metal or punk show because the crowd takes care of each other, and the band stopped the show. Yes and no. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it was a rap show. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it was a metal show. I mean, you look at that Great White concert where all those people died in an inferno. I've been in, when my first Deftone show, there was a riot and tear gas, where people, whatever. I still have a scar from that show. You have the Metallica Guns N' Roses fiasco when James Hetfield, with the flames and the pyrotechnics, and he caught on fire, and Guns N' Roses played a couple songs, and they walked off, and they tore that arena apart. The cops had to come in with tear gas.
Well, and
This
some people were saying that they couldn't possibly stop the show because it would have caused everyone to riot. And my response to
that's not
that is, if you
that's not
said
true.
we're stopping and the show is over, that's one thing.
Maybe right.
Versus, people stop shows all the time. They'll be like,
Hey
hey, it's
guys,
drizzling some rain. Let's take 10 minutes. Let's take
let's
20
take a 10.
minutes.
Let's breathe. Let's get everybody. Hey guys, let's just everybody look around, and let's just take a step away from everybody slowly. Let's give everybody some air. I'm gonna go check something back. I'll be back in 10 minutes. And then when he comes back, he doesn't go hype. He slowly brings them in and brings the energy back in a more controlled way. There's ways of doing things.
Did you
And this is
did you
this is a Travis Scott Astroworld incident. I'm not even. This is not a rap concert incident. This is not a metal concert incident. This is a Travis Scott Astroworld in Houston. 50,000 people. There's a lot of low hanging fruit of things that need to be taken care of. So I don't want to blanketly say this is a rap. This happens at rap shows, or this happens at no.
No,
This
and
is
I think that
this
by
is a
looking
unique thing.
also on a more fundamental level, right? Because Live Nation is involved with this, but who is involved in implementing policies, right? That's going to be a big thing that comes up here. So for every show, when you have a show, you need to have all kinds of plans and contingencies in place. If there's a flood, if it rains, if there's an
Right.
emergency, if we need to get people out. And so this is what the event organizers are required to deliver. And so it seems that what's coming out now is that they did have
They
these policies in place, but number one, they didn't follow them when the actual emergencies started coming up. But then number two, I was reading something about how, the people who had passed away, that, the dead bodies essentially, they're being referred to as Smurfs, and like in a release that went to the staff there. So
I
there's
didn't
just
like
kind of this
that. That could have been a
callousness.
nice code 7, code 8. We have a 62 in progress. I don't. Maybe Smurf stands for something. I don't know, but like that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. Like whoever came up with that was you could have literally said we have code 5, and that would have had the same amount of effect as calling there's so much stuff, and it's going to keep coming out. This is going to be something that goes on for a long time, because as you were saying earlier, there's some that are predicting the damages to be in the billions. Hit the insurance for the show, because you mentioned another podcast how you have to have insurance for all these events and stuff. It doesn't even come close to covering the stuff that's happened already.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
guys,
long gone.
through my law firm, for example, when we have insurance issues and we're the damaged side, we have to go and see what the policy limit is, because if you get an insurance policy, that insurance policy might, let's say, be for $20 million. But if your claims from all the people who were harmed far exceeds that, the insurance company says, hey, we reached our limit, we'll pay out this much. And then now we're getting to the actual people in their pockets. We're going after Live Nation personally, we're going after Travis Scott, we're going after Drake. So that's probably what's going to happen, to the extent that this is, let's say, in the billions of dollars by the end of it, the insurance policy is probably not going to cover that much.
Yeah, so we'll see who claim when all the bankruptcies start coming in, and whatever. But yeah, there's definitely got to be some accountability, some real accountability, and not that I'm like like out for blood necessarily, but like I said, the kids that are jumping on these things, or anybody that prevented or hindered the ambulances from getting through if they're on tape, any of these kids that are seen contributing to the actions that went on that night, the police officers and security guards who were not doing their job, who were filming the show because they wanted to be up close and get that Travis Scott stuff, all of these people need to be held accountable. That's their whole job. And if you can't even trust the police or security as they're there, then I don't know. Maybe we don't start going to Live Nation shows anymore. I don't know. Like there needs
Yeah.
to be a change. There needs to be a direct change to prove a point. So these 9 people now, 9, and this 9-year-old in a coma, it wasn't for nothing.
Yeah. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because we're going to be tracking this as new lawsuits are obviously being filed every second. We're going to be covering more of the lawsuits, more of the updates, more of what's going to happen. So be sure to subscribe. And yeah, I appreciate you giving us these stories today, That Orko. There's so much that happens, but this is why we do the weekly live.